What we are gonna do. We're gonna be looking at a subject to finance, seller finance deal. So sometimes it's called a sub to hybrid deal. And for those of you that are in the sub to community, I'm part of that community as well. But we haven't. It's been over a month since we last analyzed the deal, so I thought, hey, let's keep it fresh, right? Let's just not just talk. Let's also do some stuff together and analyze the deal. So I wanted to show you all how to tactically, and you haven't seen this video before, how to tactically put in the numbers for a sub 2 hybrid deal to see whether or not it might cash flow as a Section 8 seller financing deal. Now, when you see these subject to deals, right? Subject to is when you're buying the property, you're taking ownership of the property, but you're taking over the payments on the underlying loan. The underlying loan stays in the seller's name typically. So the advantage here is that you get to take over the payments on the underlying loan at a lower mortgage rate than what's typically out there, right? We're seeing interest rates in the sixes, sometimes even sevens for investment properties. And then the seller is also plugging it in and acting as the bank for the equity portion. Now you might think, or you might ask, hey, why would a seller do this? And typically why they would want to sell is because if they were to go on the market and they don't sell the property for the price that they can get. I mean, they can't sell the property for the price that they want. So in order to make it a sweeter deal for someone to pay a higher price, quote unquote, right? They have to offer better financing terms. And that is the value that is embedded within the property itself. So when you do this, this helps so much. It helps with just the numbers, monthly payment. Because now, if you're an investor, you might be looking for cash flow, right? So let's go through and look at this, right? Because you might think, oh, 3% seller financing, that's automatically a deal. But a deal for you might not be a deal for somebody else, right? So today we're only looking at whether or not this property is going to cash flow. So I'm going to do a couple of things, right? First, I'm going to review all the numbers here. So the purchase price is $390,000. Let's plug this into our spreadsheet. If you guys want to copy the spreadsheet to follow along, just go to affordablehousing.io, go to the get deal analysis tool, plug in your name, your email, your phone number, and that's the fastest way for you to get a copy of the spreadsheet. Okay. Now in my rehab, give me 1 second. Let me go through and plug in some of these details. So entry fee is 34,700 plus closing costs. So our cash to seller is 24,700. So I'm gonna plug that right into E19. Our assignment fee is $10,000. That's gonna go into E21. And my total PITI breakdown is $2,084. So my total monthly payment is 2,535. So here's how I would enter it, right? I'm gonna go and plug in the details. So this mortgage information, this is the underlying loan that you're taking over the payments on. So I'm gonna plug in an existing loan, 247,435 in K6. I'm gonna plug in the interest rate of 4.75%. The maturity date is 3/1/52, so I'm gonna put 3/1/22 here. All right. The next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna plug in the seller carry portion. So this is the equity that the seller has in a deal or thinks he has in a deal, and they're acting as the bank to finance this back at a 3% interest rate, 30-year term amortization, but the balloon is 7 years. So they want the balance of the loan to be paid out in 7 years. Why? Because if you follow 30-year amortization, most of your money in the first 7, 15 years are primarily interest payments. So the seller gets to make a little bit more for a higher gain on the property. Okay. So now that I got these details in here, what I'm also going to do is put aside 2.5% for closing costs. So it gives 0.025. I'm going to multiply that by B4, which is the asking price. So I got 97.50 for closing costs. I think I should go to 2%. That seems a little high. So 2%, put that for 2%, just depending on the prices here. I did 2.5% for Birmingham. Okay. So now that I got that number, I want to also calculate how much would this property cash flow. And I don't need to calculate exactly what my principal and my interest portion of the subject to loan is, or the principal and the interest portion of the seller financing note is, because all I care about is cash flow. So I can go to my property tax number in B28. I'm gonna do equals B 2535, which is the total disclosed monthly payment, right? So I'm gonna do equals that. Um, I'm gonna do equals B. I'm gonna do 2535 minus the principal and interest portion of the subject to loan minus the principal and interest portion of the seller financing note. And this gives me the balance, right? So that essentially is my escrow amount. Great for taxes and insurance. But I'm pretty sure when I turn this to an investment property, the insurance company is going to charge me a little bit more money for monthly insurance because they view investment assets as a higher risk compared to a home that you're living in as a primary residence, right? That's just how insurance companies view risk. So I'm going to add extra $50 per month for my insurance costs. Great. Now, let's go ahead and look at some pictures, right? Let's look at this property. I mean, does this property look pretty good? I mean, there's a shed in the back, but for the most part, this looks pretty turnkey. So I don't think there's much renovations here. So if I go to my rehab calculator, I'll probably put in a probably put in like 300 square feet of painting just in case there's some touch up work that needs to be done. I'm replacing two of the toilets with high pressure flush toilets so that I don't ever get those clogged toilet calls. I got them in my property right now in Cambridge and it works wonders. I have not had a clogged toilet call, so I want to keep it that way. All right. So now, then we have our 500 bucks for some landscaping to keep things tidy, and I got 1,500 bucks for the roof in case there's any patchwork that needs to get done. So this gives me a total rehab of about 45-60. Great. Not going to add in anything more to it. Now for my rent, I need to look at two places. The first thing I'm going to do is I have to look up the HUD FMR, the fair market rents. And I'm going to go to Google that, click on the first link, then scroll to the bottom, and I'm going to click on access to small area FMRs. When I click on that, I'm gonna click up, look up FY 2025 small area FMRs. Oh, actually, I forgot to check whether or not there's anybody on the live. In case anybody has any questions, I can listen to the chat. Okay, great. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna look up by state, by county, and you just do a quick control find, and you find out what county this property is in. Wait, did that show up? Where's the word county? I'm not seeing it. Let's head in here. Hold on. All right. County. Travis County. Great. Right here. So then I'm going to look up Travis County. And now I want to see. Oh, it's not considered a small area. Travis County. And I'm going to look up by bedroom count, by zip code. This property is 78744. 78744 is a 3-bedroom property. So I can see right here that my rent ceiling is 2290. 2290. 78744. And I'm also going to get the number for 4 bed just so I can understand, hey, in case there's ever an opportunity for me to increase the bedroom count, what is my incremental rent? 2660. Great. Now that I have this rent, I have to compare it against the market rent. So I'm going to go to affordablehousing.com. I'm going to the owner section. I'm going to the market rent estimator. I'm plugging the address, plugging in bedroom count. And I can see right here for 7 units within a 0.25 mile radius, there are 3 bedrooms. The average rent is 1771. Okay. 1771. 2151, 2213, 2311. Great. That's a 0.25 mile radius. So that gives me pretty good confidence on what the comps are in this area. And now you have to take the lower of the two for your rental assumption. So I have to take 1771 and plug that into my B16. And you might be wondering, hey, why am I taking the lower of the two? And this is because of the rent reasonableness test. Now, sometimes the housing authority might pay you more than the fair market rent or the SAFMR or the payment standards because they might act differently. But that is certainly usually the exception, not the rule. Because if you look at this, right, this is the Housing Choice Voucher Program Guidebook. HCV, which stands for Housing Choice Voucher, was previously known essentially as Section 8. And they rebranded from Section 8 to Housing Choice Voucher because of all the negative connotations that was associated with Section 8. And when you go to this program guidebook and you go to Section 2.2 here, you're going to see this line that says that in conducting rent reasonableness, the PHA or the Public Housing Authority must determine whether the rent to the owner is a reasonable rent in comparison to rent for other comparable unassisted units. So this means that you can't charge more rent to someone simply because they are a voucher holder, right? So obviously the size, the unit type matters, right? Single family home versus an apartment matters, right? Age of the unit, amenities, all that stuff matters. So if you don't do it right, that's not smart. Okay. And that's why you have to take the low of the two because a lot of times people make mistakes and say, oh, I see 2290 in SAFMR, and that's my rent I'm going to use. It's not it. You got to use the low of the two because of the rent reasonableness test. All right. Hopefully, this was helpful for everybody for those of you that are kind of paying attention and learning alongside me. All right. Cool. So just checking for any comments. Good. Now, here's what we're going to do next. We're going to finish out the spreadsheet. And you can see right here that I have 10% set aside for maintenance in B32. And this is money set aside every single month for capital expenditures, meaning I know that the roof is going to get replaced in 10, 15, 20 years. I know that HVAC can get replaced in 10, 15, 20 years. Same thing for my water heater. So if you don't set aside money right now, you will be grossly underestimating your expenses and overestimating your profitability. That's a big no-no. Do not be that person because sometimes you see gurus that are like, oh, there's no maintenance. It's a turnkey property. Do not run. I mean, run so fast from those guys because they are lying to you. You know it takes money to maintain a house, right? I just had an HVAC get stolen from one of my units and it cost me 5 grand to replace. Let's be realistic about what's going on here. You gotta put these expenses in, all right? And then you have property management expenses, right? So obviously you can self-manage your property, but I highly recommend underwriting a deal with property management expenses. I got 10% right now because if you, I think we're all in this for freedom of time, right? Freedom of choice. And if you don't do this correctly, then you would have bought yourself a job, right? Because if you don't underwrite with property management, then you can never offload those responsibilities to somebody. So just be very, very careful. Then I got 5% for vacancy expenses, which means that at some point the property is going to be empty. Right? It's going to be empty. So you have to figure out what you want to do. And you got to take out some expenses because someone's going to move out your property eventually at some point. Somebody eventually passes away. It's just the nature of the world. So don't fool yourself into thinking that's not it. So after you plug in all these numbers, right, all those details, if you bought this property for 390 grand, even though it's a subject to hybrid deal with a great interest rate, because of how the monthly payment shakes out and all the expenses, you will be losing $1,256 a month. And again, this is not investment advice. I'm not soliciting any investments on the call. I'm just simply showing you how to tactically put in the numbers and really understand why you are putting a number where in the spreadsheet. Because it's a little bit more complicated and you cannot leave out those expenses. You'd be lying to yourself. All right. So hopefully this was helpful, everybody. I really wanted to show you how to tactically put together all the numbers and all the spreadsheets about how to analyze a subject to seller finance deal. And we went through that exact thing. And again, my goal is I hope you copy my homework. I hope you analyze the same deal I analyzed today using the same spreadsheet. and put it on your own YouTube channel, right? Because at some point, someone's going to ask you, hey, why do you think this is a deal? And you can say, hey, I know this is a deal because I've been looking at analyzing deals for the past 500 days in a row. Might that give you some confidence that you know what you're doing? I certainly hope so. All right. Hope you all have an amazing Tuesday. Spend some quality time with your family and friends today. That's what life is all about. Make the time. And I hope you all have an amazing day. And again, you guys want to copy a spreadsheet, go to affordablehousing.io, not .com, and then go click on the Get Deal Analysis tool, and you get a copy of the spreadsheet. That's a fast way for you to copy a spreadsheet. All right. Have an amazing, amazing Tuesday. I'll see you tomorrow for day 558. Have a good one, everybody.